Okay, hello everyone. As you can see in the background, uh, this session is primarily geared towards talking about why sociology is an optional, right? Why opt for sociology? So this is about, in a certain sense, sociology as an optional for civil services examination, and some of our reasons for, some pertinent reasons uh, that should kind of, help us make decision regarding this. So let me straight away, without wasting much of your time, let me just straight away take the plunge. Right? Why? Why sociology as an option, or why opt for sociology as far as civil services examination, UPSC civil services examination is concerned? Now, there is, you have immediate reasons for going ahead with sociology as an optional. And these immediate reasons, I don't think are new to you or are news to you, right? अक्सर हम लोगों को ये चीज़ें मालूम है, क्योंकि जाहिर है अगर हमने सोशियोलॉजी के बारे में अगर हम सोच रहे हैं, इफ़ यू आर थिंकिंग अबाउट ऑप्टिंग फॉर सोशियोलॉजी एज एन ऑप्शनल, तो कहीं ना कहीं हमने कुछ ना कुछ अपने लेवल पर थोड़ी बहुत रिसर्च की होगी, थोड़ा सिलेबस देखा होगा, उसको कंपेयर किया होगा. So I have kind of jotted down some of the important things here. So your immediate reasons कि फौरन जिसको कहते हैं ना कि किसी भी चीज़ के बारे में एकदम पहले कुछ reasons जो हो सकते हैं वो ये reasons हैं. So if we are opting for sociology, these could be our immediate reasons. What is the first reason? Shorter syllabus, right? I mean, of course, it is not to say that it's too short, but compared to other optional subjects, and particularly engineering services, और आप जानते ही हैं कि in UPSC a major lot essentially comes from engineering colleges, and particularly sociology. Those who opt for sociology as an optional, most of them, I would say, roughly about 90%, if I'm not mistaken, are engineering graduates. And from all, from the entire spectrum of engineering colleges, we're talking about starting with IITs all the way till maybe private engineering institutes and colleges. So as compared to engineering sciences particularly, and then there are other optionals as well, for instance, geography, even to a certain extent, anthropology, philosophy. Sociology syllabus is kind of, relatively speaking, shorter, right? Uh, and then lesser number of thinkers. So when we are deciding for an optional, so usually what happens is, let's say that we've done engineering and we're deciding for an optional. So of course, no matter which optional you choose, whether you choose sociology or geography or philosophy or political science, one of the things that always remains very, very crucial is that how much theory part is there, right? क्योंकि कुछ चीज़ें होती हैं जो हम समझ सकते हैं. I mean, of course, if you're coming from sort of engineering background or some other science background, तो जाहिर है, मतलब it's quite obvious that it will not really be rocket science for you. A lot of it you will understand. But there is a tricky bit in the syllabus of any of these optionals, और वो है theory का part. कि thinkers कितने हैं, क्या क्या theoretical stuff है. So that is very, very important to know so as to decide whether you want to go ahead with that option or not. Now in sociology, as far as the thinkers part is concerned, you actually have not that many thinkers. You only have 6 thinkers. और इसमें भी 2-3 thinkers का तो बहुत ही कम portion है. Right? So for instance, if you're comparing, for instance, Marx, Weber और Durkheim, इनके तो 4-4 concepts हैं जिसके ऊपर काफ़ी detail में बातचीत होती है. But then the remaining 3, which is Parsons, Merton, and George Herbert Mead, you only have 2 concepts. So it's not really that overwhelming, the theory part, the thinkers part, which is of paper 1. So that is something that can always be an incentive, lesser number of thinkers. Following that, उसके बाद क्या चीज़ है जो हम immediate reasons में consider कर सकते हैं? Exciting subject matter. What does this mean? When we are talking about, I was just to kind of, in a certain sense, if we have to, let's say, think about this a little bit in detail, right? What exactly is it? Exciting subject matter. Now, when we are talking about the subject matter of sociology, we are essentially pointing out that, sociology studies pretty much everything and anything under the sun. Everything and anything. And I mean it. किसी भी चीज़ की आप बात करें उसकी एक सोशियोलॉजिकल स्टडी या उसके ऊपर एक सोशियोलॉजिकल पर्सपेक्टिव हो सकता है किसी भी चीज़ की आप बात करें. You want to talk about film songs, there is a sociological perspective on film songs. You want to talk about TV series, there is a sociological perspective on TV series. You want to talk about platform economy, for instance, you want to talk about delivery services like Swiggy, Zomato and others, there is a sociological insight on that. तो हर एक चीज के ऊपर सोशियोलॉजी का कुछ ना कुछ कहना जरूर है. In that sense, it actually talks about a lot of stuff that is current and contemporary. So it's very exciting in that sense. You can talk about artificial intelligence, you can talk about protests and movements, you can talk about the pandemic, you can talk about loss, you can talk about suffering, you can talk about happiness, consumerism, malls, I mean, you name it, anything. So in that sense, it's a very exciting discipline, and whatever it has is very, very interesting for all of us. So that is also an immediate reason, right? That whatever you're reading, much of it is actually quite exciting. तो एक तो ये है कि आपकी कंपटीशन की तैयारी भी हो रही है, और कंपटीशन की तैयारी के साथ साथ आप कुछ ऐसी चीज़ें पढ़ रहे हैं जिनमें आपका इंटरेस्ट बन रहा है, right? So you are genuinely kind of, getting more and more interested in the stuff that is taught or the stuff that is shared in sociology. So that could very well be one of the immediate reasons. Now, following that, it helps develop an informed understanding, right? An informed understanding, or let's say an informed and sound perspective or understanding of contemporary issues of relevance. So this is also something that is very, very critical. That sociology actually, so there are a lot of issues that are contemporary issues of relevance. For instance, let's say the pandemic, right? I mean, COVID has struck us really, really hard, and particularly the second wave, as all of you would know, was was markedly devastating. Many of us were kind of hit by it. So here we're talking about informed and sound perspective. So sociology actually helps us understand a deeper understanding, a broader understanding, a more informed understanding of a lot of things that are happening in and around the society. Anything that you can say, you can talk about. I mean, you talk about the price hike of mustard oil. I mean, there is a sociological perspective on that. You talk about AI, there is a sociological perspective on that. You talk about online shopping, there is a sociological perspective on that. And the commonsensical approach, जो एक आम आदमी की जो समझ होती है, वो तो एक जाहिर है वो एक आम समझ है, वो हम सबकी समझ है. लेकिन सोशियोलॉजी जिस तरीके की अंडरस्टैंडिंग बनाने की कोशिश करता है, डिसिप्लिन, द डिसिप्लिन ऑफ सोशियोलॉजी, द काइंड ऑफ अंडरस्टैंडिंग दैट इट ट्राइज टू डेवलप इज ऑलवेज more informed, and it's a much more sound, it's a much sounder perspective on these issues, right? So these are your, in a certain sense, these are your immediate reasons, right? Now let us move forward and talk about the important reasons, right? Now the important reasons are, so immediate reasons are reasons that you are kind of aware of, right? So a little bit you're aware of, a little bit perhaps you got to know. Now, when it comes to important reasons, these are kind of, this is more important, as the name also suggests. So here we are talking about some really, really critical stuff here. So let's say we are talking about other aspects, or let's say other components of your mains examination, your UPSC mains examination. So one thing that is quite clear, and that could be said with utmost conviction, is that it is very, very helpful in your GS mains papers. What do I mean by that? As I said in the previous slide, it said contemporary issues of relevance को लेकर के आपकी एक ज़्यादा अच्छी समझ बनती है. So in your GS mains paper, you actually require a more informed and a more nuanced understanding of contemporary issues. Once in a while, it might happen that you're writing on something and you kind of miss out, or let's say you're not able to remember one or two points. Sociology is going to come to your rescue then. ऐसे मौके पे आपको बचा लेगा. और कुछ ऐसी चीज़ों पे आप कुछ ऐसे पॉइंट्स दे सकते हैं जो आमतौर पे जीएस में लोग नहीं देते हैं. सो दैट in a certain sense, it helps you in your mains examination. Sociology also helps you in writing a more effective prose. आपकी जो लिखाई है उसकी क्वालिटी बहुत बेहतर हो जाती है. सोशियोलॉजी अगर आप सोशियोलॉजी पढ़ रहे हैं एज ऑप्शनल, या अगर आप एक डिसिप्लिन के तौर पे सोशियोलॉजी को पढ़ रहे हैं और समझने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. आगे चलते हैं. जो दूसरा रीजन है, द अदर इंपॉर्टेंट रीजन is in relation to essay. Now you all know essay is a very, very important component of your mains examination. Now if you have your sociology in place, if you have the desired command in sociology, then your essay will be absolutely fabulous, right? Because what is it that one is expecting out of a good essay? एक अच्छा essay कौन सा होता है? एक अच्छा ऐसे वो होता है जिसमें आप अच्छे कनेक्शंस ड्रॉ करते हैं, राइट? अ गुड ऐसे इज नॉट नेसेसरीली गुड इन टर्म्स ऑफ लैंग्वेज. दैट इज जस्ट वन कंडीशन. अ गुड ऐसे is one where you are able to kind of draw fascinating connections between different aspects, right? Now what sociology generally does, आम तौर पे ये sociology में होता है, what it generally does is it kind of helps you develop that capacity to draw connections in general. हाँ, sociology मतलब sociology इसलिए नहीं पढ़ाई जाती है कि लोग अच्छे essays लिखें. मैं ये बता रहा हूँ कि अगर आप सोशियोलॉजी पढ़ते हैं तो ये चीज़ें ऑटोमेटिकली आपके अंदर पैदा हो जाती हैं. दीज आर थिंग्स दैट ऑटोमेटिकली ग्रो इन यू, और लेट्स से दे बिकम पार्ट ऑफ योर थिंकिंग, योर राइटिंग. So that way it's very helpful. So any student from sociology will always write a better essay, will always be in a position to draw connections more promisingly, will always be in a position to weave in different arguments, जिनको कहते हैं एक दूसरे अलग अलग आर्ग्यूमेंट्स को एक दूसरे में बुनना. दैट्स वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, और ये सोशियोलॉजी में सिखाया जाता है. दिस इज समथिंग दैट वी लर्न इन सोशियोलॉजी. सो essay is always much better if you are a sociology student, not just in terms of content. Content तो आपका अच्छा होता ही है because you already have a better understanding. और आप जानते ही हैं, if you've been going through, if you've kind of checked out, previous year essays, usually there is a certain kind of, I would say that broadly speaking, you have something related to technology, something related to change, something related to, in a certain sense, international relations. तो हर साल के ऐसे में एक ना एक टॉपिक ऐसा ज़रूर होता है, या आई वुडंट बी सरप्राइज्ड अगर ज़्यादा हो, तो जिसका सोशियोलॉजी के सिलेबस से कुछ ना कुछ लेना देना होता है. आई मीन यू कैन ऑलवेज go through the syllabus of sociology and then go through previous year essay topics, and you will immediately understand what is it that I'm trying to say. So that's very important. The third thing is it offers advantage with respect to the interview round. तो ये आपके सिविल्स के जो 2 राउंड्स हैं, सेकेंड और थर्ड, जो पर्सनैलिटी असेसमेंट राउंड है आपका once you clear your mains examination, और मेंस एग्जामिनेशन, ये 2 राउंड्स है. तो मेंस एग्जामिनेशन का मैंने आपको बता दिया कि आपके जीएस में आपकी बहुत मदद करेगा, फिर उसके बाद से आपके एसए के पेपर में आपकी मदद करेगा. ऑप्शनल तो खैर आपका है ही सोशियोलॉजी. एंड देन फॉलोइंग दैट, वंस यू हैव काइंड ऑफ यू आर अबव द कट and you've made it to the list of candidates who have been shortlisted for the interview, then again sociology is going to be very helpful, because you can, if you're asked questions about, let's say, inflation, or if you're asked questions about, let's say, technology human interface, if you're asked questions about green buildings, if you're asked questions about renewable, non-renewable, if you're asked questions about the pandemic, if you're asked questions about domestic violence and work-life balance, there are so many things that people ask about. and you can always provide fascinating answers if you have your sociology in place. तो इंटरव्यू में भी पूरे चांसेस हैं कि आपके आंसर्स not only will they be sort of what should I say, would they be more informed, but they will actually be very appealing for the board members, right? So you will, because you will again be drawing connections, and you will, invite the board members to think about these issues somewhat differently, right? And that is of course something that is going to give you an edge over other candidates, right? So that's your important reasons. Now let's move on to, so what I have done so far is, a very, very preliminary, हाँ, बहुत ज़्यादा हम इसकी डिटेल में नहीं गए हैं क्योंकि इस पे बहुत ज़्यादा वक्त लगाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, लेकिन बिल्कुल बुनियादी बात, something that's really fundamental, why opt for sociology, what's there in this optional, हाँ, क्यों आखिर हम इसको करें? तो भाई उसके रीजंस हैं. अब रीजंस में हमने क्या बात करी कि कुछ तो हैं इमीडिएट रीजंस जो कि बहुत ही प्रैग्मेटिक प्रैक्टिकल रीजंस हैं कि साहब सिलेबस कम है और इसमें थिंकर्स का पार्ट कम है और चीज़ें थोड़ी एक्साइटिंग हैं, ज़्यादातर चीज़ें समझ में आने वाली हैं, बहुत ज़्यादा मुश्किल नहीं है, कुछ कुछ चीज़ों में कंसेप्चुअल क्लैरिटी चाहिए, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा. सो दीज आर योर इमीडिएट रीजंस. बट देन फॉलोइंग दैट वी टॉक्ड अबाउट इंपॉर्टेंट रीजंस, कि कौन सी वो चीज़ें हैं जो कि बहुत ज़्यादा अहम है, इंपॉर्टेंट. हाँ, उसमें हमने बात की कि कैसे ये हमारी जीएस मेंस के एग्ज़ाम में मदद करता है सारे पेपर्स में, कैसे ये हमारी एसए में मदद करता है, और किस तरीके से जो फाइनल राउंड है विच इज़ द पर्सनालिटी असेसमेंट इंटरव्यू राउंड, उसमें ये हमारी मदद करता है. नाउ लेट्स क्विकली गेट टू द सिलेबस. As all of you would know, I'm sure you've already gone through it, but I'll just quickly, take you through the syllabus. So it has two papers. One is Fundamentals of Sociology, and the other is the paper two is Indian Society, right? So Fundamentals of Sociology there are several units. So I'll just quickly take you through these units. So you have Sociology, the discipline, which is the opening unit, and as you can see, it's generally about some kind of a background. So क्या हो रहा था यूरोप में when sociology emerged in the 19th century, beginning of the 19th century, first half of the 19th century. So in this we talk about industrial revolution, French Revolution, Enlightenment, feminism, migration, in a certain sense, growth of capitalism, which is to do with industrial revolution. So these are things that we discussed, biological theories of evolution, and there are a range of sources that we use to do this. Then following that, we talk about what is the scope. Sociology ka scope kya hai? And then we compare sociology with other social sciences. Sociology is comparison with anthropology, with political science, with economics, with history, with psychology, and also with philosophy. Right? So these are the social sciences that we kind of compare and contrast sociology with. And then lastly, we talk about sociology and common sense. क्योंकि सोशियोलॉजिकल अंडरस्टैंडिंग और कॉमन सेंसिकल अंडरस्टैंडिंग में फ़र्क है, तो इसी के बारे में बात की जाती है कि भाई कॉमन सेंस क्या है, कब कब कॉमन सेंस का इस्तेमाल किया जा सकता है और कब हमें कॉमन सेंस का इस्तेमाल नहीं करना है, और सोशियोलॉजी और कॉमन सेंस के बीच में क्या रिश्ता है. तो ये आपका हो गया बिल्कुल शुरुआत का. अब आगे चलते हैं, जो उसी में दूसरा यूनिट, सोशियोलॉजी एज साइंस. दिस इज ऑल्सो अगेन स्लाइटली इन a certain kind of a background. 19th century में बहुत जोर दिया जा रहा था कि भाई sociology should be treated as a science. Now there, so you have a set of subunits there. So we talk about science. What is science? We talk about what is the scientific method. What are the important core features of a method that claims to be scientific? And then we talk about the critique of scientific method. कि scientific method की जो कमियां निकाली गई वो क्या उनकी बुनियाद क्या थी? What was the basis of the critique or the criticism of scientific methods? Then we talk about major theoretical strands, research methodology, अलग-अलग research करने के जो रास्ते हैं, तरीके हैं sociology में, उसके बारे में हम बात करते हैं. So we primarily talk about positivism, non-positivism. Then we talk about positivism, which is a very, very important school of thought in the 19th century social theory. पॉजिटिविज्म के बारे में बात करते हैं, उसका क्रिटिक क्या है, लोगों ने उसके क्या कमियां निकाली, उसके क्या लिमिटेशंस बताई, उसके बारे में बात करते हैं. देन वी टॉक अबाउट व्हाट इज अ फैक्ट, व्हाट्स अ वैल्यू, एंड द काइंड ऑफ रिलेशनशिप दैट इज देयर बिटवीन फैक्ट एंड वैल्यू, एंड द होल आइडिया ऑफ ऑब्जेक्टिविटी. क्योंकि जाहिर है, अगर इफ एनी डिसिप्लिन क्लेम्स टू बी साइंटिफिक, then one of the things that the discipline is always doing is it is trying to remain objective. So fact, value and objectivity. और बिल्कुल आखिरी में नॉन पॉजिटिविस्ट methodologies. This is actually a repetition. Actually, when we discuss major theoretical strands of research methodology, नॉन पॉजिटिविस्ट methodologies उसमें ही डिस्कस कर लिया जाता है, तो इसको अलग से पढ़ाने की ज़रूरत नहीं होती है. Let's move forward. Research methods and analysis, ये भी एक बहुत ही दिलचस्प यूनिट है. Here we talk about quantitative and qualitative at length. क्या होते हैं, when are they used, when are they not to be used, what is the distinction, what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages, and then we talk about techniques of data collection. Techniques के अंदर आप बहुत सारी चीज़ों की बात करते हैं. You talk about survey method, you talk about interview, you talk about questionnaire, you talk about ethnography, content analysis, comparative method. तो what you usually do is इसमें से 10 मार्क के short note आते हैं. So you talk about everything in the sense that बहुत ही exhaustively आप बात करते हैं, so that nothing is outside your notes. Everything is discussed. And then following that we discuss variables. ये research के अंदर variables एक reference है. Sampling. Sampling में कई सारे types की sampling है. We divide sampling into probability and non-probability, और फिर probability में 4 हैं, non-probability में 5 अलग-अलग तरीके की हैं. So we discuss what are these. We talk about their examples, we talk about their advantages, their disadvantages, and then we talk about reliability and validity. Reliability और validity की research में बात की जाती है. Reliability has to do with replicability. अगर किसी research को आप दोबारा कर पाते हैं तो वो उसकी reliability को बताता है. और अगर कोई research whatever it claims, अगर वो अपने claim में truthful है, then वो उसकी validity की बात करता है. Of course, there is more to it, but I just wanted to flag this. Right, so that's your third unit, paper 1. Let's move forward. Now we move on to the crux, which is thinkers. So thinkers is always considered as a very, very important block. This has got 6 subunits. So you have, the who's who of the 19th and 20th centuries. So you have, of course, one of the greatest theorists of all times, Karl Marx. मार्क्स की बहुत सारे कॉन्सेप्ट्स हैं, बट यूपीएससी के अंदर 4 चीज़ों के बारे में जोर दिया जाता है: हिस्टोरिकल मटीरियलिज्म, क्लास स्ट्रगल, mode of production, or alienation. These are the 4 things that are talked about with reference to Karl Marx. Following that, you have Durkheim, Emile Durkheim, great French sociologist. उनके केस में division of labor, social fact, religion and society, और suicide. ये इनके कॉन्सेप्ट हैं, इस पे बात की जाती है. फिर you have Max Weber, another brilliant German sociologist. वेबर के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में हम बात करते हैं सोशल एक्शन की, आइडियल टाइप्स की, प्रोटेस्टेंट एथिक्स, स्पिरिट ऑफ कैपिटलिज्म की, ब्यूरोक्रेसी और अथॉरिटी की. सो एंड देन फॉलोइंग दैट, सो ये थिंकर्स में पहला, दूसरा, तीसरा, ये 3 सब यूनिट्स हुई. एंड आप लोग इनकी शक्ल भी देख सकते हैं. मार्क्स हैं, वेबर, डर्कहाइम, आई मीन फेयरली इंटिमिडेटिंग पीपल. और उसके बाद से फिर यू हैव फोर्थ, फिफ्थ एंड सिक्स्थ, व्हिच इज टालकट पार्सन्स, जहां पर हम सोशल सिस्टम और पैटर्न वेरिएबल्स की बात करते हैं. फॉलोइंग पार्सन्स यू हैव रॉबर्ट मर्टन, एंड मर्टन वाज पार्सन्स स्टूडेंट. मर्टन के यहाँ हम लेटेंट एंड मैनिफेस्ट फंक्शंस की बात करते हैं, कन्फॉर्मिटी एंड डेविएंस की बात करते हैं, रेफरेंस ग्रुप थियरी है उसकी बात करते हैं. एंड देन यू हैव अनदर फेलो हुज नेम इज जॉर्ज हर्बर्ट मीड. यहाँ पे सिर्फ मीड लिखा हुआ है सिलेबस में, बट इनका पूरा नाम जॉर्ज हर्बर्ट मीड है. और इनका एक सेल्फ एंड आइडेंटिटी को लेकर के ही हैज़ अ सर्टेन फॉर्मुलेशन, एंड वी डिस्कस दैट. Right, so again, this is Merton, this is George Herbert Mead, this is Talcott Parsons. Not to say that it matters, but it's always good to know the faces, right? Now, these thinkers, of course, this is just about it. So these are the 6 thinkers. But remember, whatever they have to tell us, right, in this syllabus, right, whether it's Marx or Durkheim or Weber, these are things that will keep coming back to us, right? So it is always good to kind of understand them as promisingly as possible, so that when there are these application-based questions, and I'll come to that, when there are these application-based questions, we are able to kind of apply these people, right? हमें इनकी theory अगर हमारी समझ में आ गई है, और कोशिश इसी बात की होती है कि theory को बहुत ही आसान ज़बान में आपके सामने रखा जाए, so that you can understand it. And once you've understood the theory, once you've understood the Marxian theory, or once you've understood the Durkheimian position, or once you've understood the Weberian interpretive sociology, then I think it is absolutely, it's all taken care of, right? Then you are, as we say in English, then you are in good hands, right? So this is your thinkers part. Now, following the thinkers, you have stratification and mobility, right? This is the following unit where you have concepts. तो इनके ऊपर बात होती है equality, inequality, hierarchy, exclusion, poverty, and deprivation. Then you have theories, and these theories actually take you back to the previous thinkers that we just spoke about. So you have the structural functionalist theory, which is kind of course, it is given by Kingsley Davis and Wilbert Moore, but it is kind of in a certain sense, it is inspired by the writings of Durkheim. Then you have the Marxist theory, which is very much inspired by the Marxian analysis of society, and you have the Weberian theory, Max Weber. तो पीछे thinkers अभी जो हमने बताए थे, वो लोग देखिए यहाँ भी आ गए. इसी के साथ साथ डायमेंशंस, सोशल स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन, यानी जो समाज जो अलग अलग जिसको कहते हैं सेक्शंस में या अलग अलग स्ट्रेटम में जो हम उसको डिवाइड करते हैं और एक तरीके की हायरार्की होती है, उसके बेसिस क्या होती है. तो कुछ समाज में the basis is class. There are societies where the basis is status groups, जैसे caste. There are societies where the basis is gender. There are societies where the basis is ethnicity. And there are societies where the basis is race. So we discuss all that, right? Stratification on the basis of race, stratification on the basis of class, stratification on the basis of ethnicity, and so on and so forth. And lastly, we discuss social mobility, which is about open and closed systems. Open systems, जहाँ पर mobility हो सकती है. Closed systems, जहाँ पर mobility नहीं होती है या बहुत कम होती है. Right? तो फिर types of mobility, कितने अलग अलग प्रकार की mobilities, and then sources and causes of mobility. That's very general, right? So there's nothing to, I mean, this is not hardcore intellectual stuff. Following that, work and economic life. We are talking about social organization of work. स्लेव सोसाइटीज़ में वर्क को कैसे ऑर्गेनाइज किया जाता था, फ्यूडल सोसाइटीज़ में कैसे किया जाता था, और फिर इंडस्ट्रियल कैपिटलिस्ट सोसाइटीज़ में किस तरीके से वर्क का ऑर्गेनाइजेशन होता है. हाउ व्हाट काइंड ऑफ एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल फ्रेम डू वी हैव ऑफ वर्क इन दीज सोसाइटीज़. Then you were talking about formal and informal organization of work, right? So formal organization of work की क्या खासियत होती है, what are the characteristics, and what all can we talk about, and informal organization of work, right? What all can we talk about, right? So that's formal and informal, and then labor and society. What are the connections that exist between labor on the one hand and society on the other? So that's that. Now, politics and society. This is also a very interesting unit. इसके अंदर भी देखिए आप, we talk about sociological theories of power. तो थोड़ी मोटी theories हैं. परेटो साहब की एक थ्योरी है, विल्फ्रेड परेटो की, मॉस्का एंड परेटो की सर्कुलेशन ऑफ एलीट्स. सी राइट मिल्स की एक थ्योरी है पावर एलीट. रॉबर्ट मिशेल्स की, स्टीवन ल्यूक्स की आयरन लॉ ऑफ ओलिगार्की, एंड सो ऑन. हाँ, तो इस तरीके से कई सारी, मतलब करीब 4-5 थियरीज हैं जो बहुत ही ब्रीफली दे टेल अस अबाउट हाउ डज power operate in society, right? So that is something that we discuss in sociological theories of power. Following that, we discuss some of these concepts. What is power elite? What is bureaucracy? What are pressure groups? And what are political parties, right? So some kind of a discussion on that. Following that, you have concepts again: nation, state, citizenship. Following that, democracy, civil society, and ideology. And then you have again something very contemporary, very, very interesting stuff: protest, agitation, social movements, collective action, and revolution. Right? These are different ways in which protests are actually taking place. Or let's say people stage their dissent differently. तो protest एक form है, agitation दूसरा form है, social movement एक और form है, collective action अलग form है और revolution अलग है. तो इसकी हम लोग बात करते हैं कि इनकी क्या characteristics हैं and how are they kind of different from each other. Right, so following that, you have religion in societies. Either religion is also a very, very important part of the societies we live in. Whether we live in modern societies or traditional societies, religion is always a very, very important part of our daily life. So in this, what we discuss, again, sociological theories. इसमें ज़्यादा theories नहीं है. You have Durkheim, you have Marx, you have Weber, and you have a little bit of early anthropologists. And then we talk about types of religious practices: animism, monism, pluralism, then sects, cults. So we discuss these. And then religion in modern society, right? What are the, so आज के दौर में, in the contemporary society, in the present times, what are the concerns that we have? किस तरीके की concerns हैं हमारी? तो आप देखेंगे एक बहुत ही important concern है religion और science की, इनका रिश्ता. What is it that religion and science, that kind of, that puzzle tells us? Then सेक्युलराइजेशन, इसकी भी बहुत बात होती है. हाँ, the modern world is essentially a world that is constantly getting more and more secular. So secularization पे बात होती है. फिर आज के दौर में, इस दौर में, the world in which we live, religious revivalism is also a major issue. I mean, people have been talking about it for a while. So we discussed religious revivalism, and following that, of course, a very serious problem in the times we live in, fundamentalism. Right? So that's your religion and society. Following that, you have system of kinship. Kinship आप लोगों को मालूम है, रिश्तेदारी और नातेदारी के बात जिसमें होती है. So we talk about the concepts हैं, family, household, marriage. क्या टाइप्स और फॉर्म्स हैं फैमिली की, लिनिएज और डिसेंट की बात होती है. हाँ, सो बेसिकली जिसमें आप इनहेरिटेंस की मैपिंग होती है, फैमिली टाइज को मैप किया जाता है. सो लिनिएज और डिसेंट, व्हाट इज लिनिएज, व्हाट इज डिसेंट. एंड देन पेट्रियार्की, वी ऑल आर अवेयर ऑफ इट, अनफॉर्चुनेटली इट्स देयर एवरीवेयर. And then sexual division of labor. So this is kind of looked at from the feminist vantage point. And then following that, contemporary trends in family and marriage particularly, right? So contemporary trends in family, marriage, etc. So that's your. Following that, social changes. So again, sociological theories, you have functionalist theory, you have evolutionary theory, you have Marxist theory. And then following that, development and dependency, agents of social change, किस तरीके से social change आता है. And particularly we talk about education and social change. One can also talk about law and social change, क्योंकि law से भी, legislation से भी social change आता है. And then we talk about science, technology, and social change. This is very contemporary stuff, right? So a lot of things that have happened as a result of science. For instance, massive internet connectivity. What kind of social changes has it brought about? For instance, WhatsApp, Facebook, these virtual communities, social media, apps, mobile apps. What kind of changes have these brought about in our day-to-day life? That is something that's here. And it's very exciting, to talk about how WhatsApp has changed us, how Facebook has changed us, how these apps, Zomato, Swiggy, Urban Clap, and so on, many of these apps, how the smartphone has changed us completely, Uber, Ola, dunya bhar ki cheezein, when everything is kind of happening with just what should I say, with pressing, I mean, it's not even a button, with just touching a certain icon. That is something that we will discuss. Then you have, so that's the end of your paper 1. Right? So you have a rough idea. मैंने बहुत ही briefly मैंने आपको इस चीज़ के बारे में बताया, because if we get into the details, then it takes about 3-4 hours. So I don't want to really take up that much of your time. But I just wanted to kind of give you a quick idea. Let's just move on to the second paper, which is about Indian society. So here, again, a little bit of theory in here. So we start with perspectives, right? So there are different perspectives to understand Indian society. There is an ideological perspective, there is a structural functionalist perspective, and there is a Marxist perspective. And for each of these perspectives, you have a specified theorist or a specified thinker. So G.S. Ghure, Govind Sadashiv Ghure साहब हैं, M.N. Srinivas हैं, और I.R. देसाई हैं. तो इनके कामों के बारे में हम लोग बात करते हैं, and that's how we understand these perspectives that are there to understand Indian society. This is Ghure, right? I mean, Ghure at one point of time had beard. So this is a later Ghure. This is M.N. Srinivas. ये actually YouTube पे उनका एक lecture है, वहाँ से ये photograph लिया गया है. और ये हैं आपके A.R. देसाई, right? Impact of colonial rule on Indian society. थोड़ा history के साथ overlap करता है, but we discuss this from a sociological position. Indian nationalism का social background क्या है? This is actually a book that is written by A.R. देसाई, जो इन साहब की A.R. देसाई की किताब है, Social Background of Indian Nationalism. तो उस किताब पे बात होगी, और in general भी how does sociology look at Indian nationalism. Modernization of Indian tradition, this is also something that we will discuss. This is another book that is written by a great sociologist who died last year unfortunately, Yoginder Singh. Yoginder Singh की किताब है Modernization of Indian Tradition, तो उस पे बात होती है. Protests and movements during the colonial period, and then social reforms, right? So this is something that's there. Following that, you have caste system. हम सब लोग जानते हैं that if you are studying Indian society, or if you're trying to understand Indian society, something that you must study or you must make sense of is caste. कोई भी आदमी जो इंडियन सोसाइटी की बात करता है और अगर उसको कास्ट के बारे में नहीं मालूम है, तो उस आदमी की, उस इंसान की जो समझ है इंडियन सोसाइटी की, वो गलत है या कम से कम incomplete है. Any person, any individual who makes a claim vis-a-vis understanding Indian society and does not refer to caste as an institution, either his understanding is altogether false or his or her understanding is at least incomplete, right? So caste के बारे में हम बात करते हैं, and there are particularly different perspectives. So we get four thinkers here. We start with Ghure, and then we move on to M.N. Srinivas, and then we talk about Louis Dumont, who's a French structuralist, and then we talk about André Bete, who's a great sociologist from India, who was associated with the Delhi University for pretty much his entire life. और फिर उसके बाद से फीचर्स ऑफ कास्ट सिस्टम, जो कि काफ़ी हद तक इसी में ही आ जाता है. जब घुरे की बात करते हैं तो फीचर्स ऑफ कास्ट सिस्टम इज टेकन केयर ऑफ. एंड देन लास्टली अनटचेबिलिटी, क्योंकि अनटचेबिलिटी पे भी बात करनी है. सो व्हाट आर इट्स फीचर्स and what are its forms, right? So we talk about some of the contemporary developments in the context of untouchability studies. So that's there. What are the perspectives? Following that, rural and agrarian social structure. So basically in Indian society, we are talking about urban social structure, शहरों का, और rural और agrarian, यानी गांव का, जहां पर एक तो you are talking about rural, and then in the occupational sense, जो कामकाज वाला जो हिसाब किताब है, व्यवसाय जिसको हम कहते हैं, उसके कॉन्टेक्स्ट में पेशा, उसके कॉन्टेक्स्ट में we're talking about the agriculture, right? So the idea of Indian village पे बात होगी in detail, and village studies, different definitions, different perspectives, so we will discuss that. And then agrarian social structure. Agrarian social structure kya hai? Agrarian social structure is essentially about, I mean, in this we talk about land tenure systems. So already if you do your GS history, thoda bahut to iske bare mein pata hi hota hai, but we kind of use some sociological snippets. And then we talk about land reforms, right? What else? Then you have tribal communities. So agrarian, रूरल सोशल स्ट्रक्चर हो गया. अब आया आप ट्राइबल पे, और ट्राइबल कम्युनिटीज़ हमारे हिंदुस्तान का बहुत ही अहम हिस्सा है. दे आर अ वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट ऑफ इंडियन सोसाइटी. The tribal population is more than 8% of India's population, so that's no joke. It's a fairly large section. So the tribal population, when we talk about the definitional problems. Tribals को define करने में किस तरीके की problems होती हैं, we discuss that. Following that, we talk about the geographical spread, right? So for instance, in which parts of India, what tribes are to be found, right? So for instance, what are the names of the tribes that are found in central India? What are the tribes that are found in, say, Jharkhand, or in Odisha, or in Gujarat, or in Rajasthan, or in Northeast, or in, let's say, South, right? So that's your geographical spread. So their numbers, proportion, etc., etc. And then we talk about colonial policies and tribes. How did the colonial power engage with tribes? Following that, issues of integration and autonomy. ये एक बहुत ही important concern है कि किस तरीके से tribals को integrate किया जाए, और क्या हम tribals को ऐसे integrate कर सकते हैं कि उनकी autonomy पे कोई असर ना पड़े. How do we manage to integrate the tribal communities without compromising on their autonomy? So this has been a very, very tricky affair, and people have been writing about it ever since the days of Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India. So it's been going on for about 70 years now, and it still remains quite a contentious issue. So we will discuss this, right? So that's there in your syllabus. Following that, social classes in India. We talk about agrarian class structure, we talk about industrial class structure, and we talk about middle classes in India. Middle classes is a fantastic, it's a very exciting thing, huh? Middle classes. Systems of kinship. So in a certain sense, you know, in paper one as well, we talked about it. Here, what we will do is I mean, the whole thing is kind of, it is specific in nature, right? So there, it was more general. Here, it is specifically in relation to India. So lineage and descent in India, types of kinship systems, family and marriage in India, and household dimensions of the family. This is all related to India. Then you have religion and society, again, India-centric. Religious communities in India, right? We talk about them, their basics, their essentials, some of the core characteristics of these religions and the religious communities. And then we talk about problems of religious minorities, then patriarchy, entitlements, and sexual division of labor. Actually, patriarchy, entitlements, and sexual division of labor is part of this, right? Here, it is just, let me just clarify. So here it is just this. This is from kinship system, right? Which is the previous slide, okay? All right, moving on. We are getting closer to the end. Vision of social changes in India, huh? Idea of development planning and mixed economy. हमने पढ़ा है इसके बारे में, मिक्स्ड इकोनॉमी के बारे में हम जानते हैं, टेक्स्ट बुक्स में, स्कूल की टेक्स्ट बुक्स में इसके बारे में काफ़ी बात हुई थी. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, लॉ एंड सोशल चेंज. इसी तरीके से एजुकेशन एंड सोशल चेंज. सो वी आर एसेंशियली लुकिंग एट the various ways in which social change has been brought about in our country, right? So law, constitution, education, etc., right? And then of course development planning and mixed economy. Then you have rural and agrarian transformation. So this is more very, government policies, etc., and we kind of sociologically engage with them. So programs of rural development, community development programs, cooperatives, poverty alleviation schemes. Yeah, I think most of us know about it. Green revolution, and what kind of social change did it bring about? What kind of problems did it cause or did it lead to? And then changing modes of production in Indian agriculture. So we're talking about the contemporary trends, the recent shifts that are taking place. And lastly, within that context, problem of rural labor, bondage, and migration, right? Then you have industrialization and urbanization, evolution of modern industry in India. So a certain kind of a historical perspective. Then growth of urban settlements in India, working class structure, growth, class mobilization, informal sector, child labor, and then lastly, slums and deprivation in urban areas. तो ये एक दूसरे तरीके से, मतलब एक दूसरा जो पूरा narrative है हिंदुस्तान में industrialization और urbanization का, this particular unit tries to look at different facets of that narrative, the narrative of industrialization and urbanization. And then politics and society, nation, democracy and citizenship, ये paper 1 में भी है. Political parties, pressure groups, social and political elite. Political parties, pressure groups, paper 1 में भी है, but here we will strictly talk about these from the India, in an India-specific context, right? So we will situate this in the Indian context, and then regionalism and decentralization of power, which is federalism, and then secularization, again, in the Indian context, right? Social movements, बहुत ही simple, peasants or farmers movements, women's movement, backward classes and Dalit movements, environmental movements, ethnicity and identity movements. And then you have a very, very technical kind of a unit, population dynamics. इसमें बहुत ही जिसको कहते हैं सिर्फ definitional और references हैं ये. What is the population size? How do you define growth? How do you define composition and distribution? Then components, right? Birth, death, migration. So we talk about birth rate, death rate. Population policy, there are different population policies. So we talk about each of these and we talk about their core features. What is it that they missed out on? What were their strengths, etc. And then family planning, and then some of the issues, aging, sex ratio, child and infant mortality, reproductive health, right? So that's there. And I think this is the last one, which is challenges of social transformation, very contemporary stuff. We're talking about crisis of development. What has displacement led to? What kind of environmental problems are there? What kind of issues do we have to tackle so as to gear ourselves up for sustainability? Then poverty, deprivation, inequalities, violence against women. We know this. There's so much violence that's there in the society, unfortunately, against women. Caste conflicts. Again, बहुत ज़्यादा है हम लोगों के यहाँ caste conflicts. Ethnic conflicts, communalism. This is a major problem. Religious revivalism. Again, a problem. Illiteracy and disparities in education. So this is very, very contemporary stuff. ये current affairs से इसका काफ़ी हद तक लेना देना है. But इसके ऊपर इसको समझना है sociological position से. Okay. Now, let me just quickly, now this was the syllabus. Let me also tell you that what is the question paper format. So the question paper format is fairly simple. So, of course, you have, optional, you have 2 papers, paper 1 and 2. So paper 1, you will have, the first question is notes, right? You have to, so first question has 5 parts, A, B, C, D, E. दीज आर शॉर्ट नोट्स, 10-10 मार्क्स के आपको नोट्स लिखने हैं. ये कंपल्सरी क्वेश्चन है, पहला क्वेश्चन. ठीक, दिस इज पेपर 1 पार्ट ए. तो पार्ट ए में पहला सवाल, 5 उसके हिस्से हैं, ए बी सी डी ई, कुछ भी आ जाएगा. मान लीजिए उसमें पूछ लिया इंटरव्यू एज अ मेथड, या प्रोबेबिलिटी सैम्पलिंग, या जनरली लॉ एंड सोशल चेंज, कुछ भी पूछ लिया, लेकिन ये पहला क्वेश्चन कंपल्सरी है. ठीक, अब इसके बाद आते हैं दूसरे सवाल पे. सो सेकंड, थर्ड और फोर्थ ये सब एक ही तरीके के हैं. क्या होता है, every question has 3 parts, right? Or let's say 3, within every question there are 3 questions. So 2a में क्या होगा, 20 मार्क का एक सवाल, 2b फिर 20 मार्क का एक सवाल, और 2c 10 मार्क का. So every question, so number 2 is of 50 marks, number 3 is of 50 marks, number 4 is of 50 marks. So क्या हुआ, question number 1 50 marks, 10 marks के 5 सवाल. Question number 2 50 marks, 20 20 10. Question number 3 50 marks, 20 20 10. Question number 4 50 marks, 20 20 10. This is the first part, part A of paper 1. क्या करना है, पहला सवाल कंपल्सरी है. अभी बताता हूं. तो 50 नंबर तो आपने कर दिया. अब आते हैं पार्ट बी पे. क्वेश्चन नंबर 5 एग्जैक्टली बिल्कुल क्वेश्चन नंबर 1 की तरह, 5 शॉर्ट नोट्स हैं, कंपल्सरी है. ठीक, और उसके बाद से 6th 7th और 8th बिल्कुल सेकंड, थर्ड और फोर्थ क्वेश्चन की तरह 3 सवाल हैं, 20 20 10, 20 20 10, 20 20 10. सो बेसिकली ओवरऑल इट्स अ 400 मार्क क्वेश्चन पेपर. हाँ, 50-50 मार्क्स के 8 सवाल हैं. पहला सवाल कंपल्सरी, 5वां सवाल कंपल्सरी. लेकिन अब जो बचा है आपका 250 मार्क्स का है पेपर 1, तो अब आपको 150 मार्क्स जो करने हैं. सो यू हैव टू राइट 3, यू हैव टू अटेम्प्ट 3 क्वेश्चंस. बट द कंडीशन इज किसी भी सेक्शन में से आपको कम से कम 1 लेना है, और दूसरे सेक्शन से फिर आपको 2 लेने होंगे. सो फॉर इंस्टेंस लेट्स से पार्ट ए, सो फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन यू हैव टू डू. नाउ फ्रॉम सेकंड, थर्ड एंड फोर्थ आप कोई एक तो आपको करना ही पड़ेगा. ठीक, तो अगर आपने सेकंड कर लिया 20 20 10 ये हो गया, आपने थर्ड भी कर लिया, बहुत अच्छी बात है. अब अगले पार्ट में से क्वेश्चन नंबर 5 आपको करना है, दैट्स अ कंपल्सरी वन. उसके बाद से 6th 7th 8th में से कोई एक कर सकते हैं. सो दैट्स हाउ यू गेट 250. दैट्स एंड एग्जैक्टली द सेम इज द केस विद पेपर 2. सो बेसिकली 8 सवाल होते हैं. पेपर 1 पार्ट ए पार्ट बी 4-4 सवाल हैं, हर सवाल 50 मार्क्स का है. पहले सवाल में 5 शॉर्ट नोट्स हैं, कंपल्सरी है. दूसरे, तीसरे, चौथे में 3 सवाल होते हैं 20 20 10 के. इनमें से आपको कम से कम कोई एक करना है, ज्यादा से ज्यादा 2 करने हैं. पार्ट बी में आएंगे, 5वां नंबर जो सवाल है कंपल्सरी है, करना ही करना है. 10-10 मार्क्स के 5 शॉर्ट नोट्स हैं, और उसके बाद से 6 7 8 6 7 8 जो क्वेश्चंस हैं उसके 3-3 भाग हैं. 20 20 10 के क्वेश्चंस हैं, उसमें से आपको कोई एक कम से कम करना है, और ज्यादा से ज्यादा आपको 2 करना है. सो ओवरऑल आपका 250 मार्क्स का पेपर 1 और 250 मार्क्स का पेपर 2, ये आपका क्वेश्चन पेपर है. तो सिलेबस बता दिया, और एक तरीके से आपको क्वेश्चन पेपर का लेआउट बता दिया. नाउ लेट्स क्विकली, अब ये जो सिलेबस बताया, सो द इंपॉर्टेंट बिट इज दैट वी हैव टू डेवलप, जिसको हम कहते हैं देयर इज जस्ट नो अदर ऑप्शन, वी हैव टू डेवलप व्हाट वी कॉल द सोशियोलॉजिकल पर्सपेक्टिव. ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. सोशियोलॉजिकल पर्सपेक्टिव का क्या मतलब है, दैट वी मस्ट बी एबल टू थिंक सोशियोलॉजिकली. यानी let's say you're writing on pandemic, let's say you're writing on the migrant crisis, let's say you're writing on, I don't know, you're writing on the farm laws. हाँ, कोई सवाल आ गया है फार्मर्स एजुटेशन के ऊपर, कोई सवाल आ गया है पैंडमिक के ऊपर, कोई सवाल आ गया है आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस के ऊपर, कोई सवाल आ गया है कास्ट कॉन्फ्लिक्ट के ऊपर, रिजर्वेशन को लेकर के, कोटा को लेके मान लीजिए देयर आर पीपल हु आर मेकिंग अ क्लेम, देयर इज अ क्वेश्चन ऑन दैट. Now, one is that you have read current affairs, आपको थोड़ा बहुत पता है, न्यूज़ पढ़ी है, कुछ discussions आपने देखे हैं, and you write about it. But that's a very GS, that's a typical GS approach. In sociology, you don't go ahead with a GS approach. You actually bring in connections. You bring in different theories, because already people have written about a lot of these things, right? So that will only happen when you have the sociological perspective. So if you don't have the sociological perspective, then your answers, even if you've written the facts, आपके facts सारे ठीक होंगे, but your answers will miss out on something that is really critical, जो बहुत ज़रूरी है. हाँ, क्योंकि आप एक सोशियोलॉजी के स्टूडेंट हैं, ये ऑप्शनल पेपर है आपका सोशियोलॉजी, तो जाहिर है आपके जो आंसर्स होंगे उनमें सोशियोलॉजिकल पर्सपेक्टिव का होना ज़रूरी है. इट इज़ देयर इज जस्ट नो वे आउट. So how does it work? So the importance of sociological perspective. Now, how we help you develop it. Now, the course that we have, the foundation course, the most important concern in this foundation course is how to develop the sociological perspective. कि कैसे इस बात की कोशिश की जाए कि आप खुद से, the teacher is not necessarily helping you, but on your own, you are able to think sociologically and write sociologically, right? And this will happen only because, you will be introduced to what the perspective is and how it can be developed. Of course, it will not happen overnight. रातों रात कोई चीज़ नहीं होती और ये भी नहीं होगी. इसमें वक्त लगता है. It takes time. But then, whenever it happens in a very, very assuring way. आपको बहुत ही जिसको कहते हैं you develop that confidence. So what is done is that conceptual clarity is brought about. हर एक चीज़ को लेकर के जो concepts हैं उनको काफ़ी clear किया जाता है. बहुत ही detail में concepts के बारे में बात की जाती है so that you understand the topic, you understand the construct, you understand the formulation. Now, once you've understood, then what happens is there is nothing to worry. Then you can always draw the connections. So conceptual clarity and a lot of examples are given because examples help us remember the concept. कई बार ऐसा होता है कि concept मुश्किल होता है, लेकिन अगर आपने उसका सही example दे दिया, और example भी, the important point is example वो नहीं देना है जो किताबों में है. Because let's say you're reading a book by Anthony Giddens. Giddens एक British sociologist हैं, तो उन्होंने example दिया है लंदन के किसी हिसाब किताब से. So I mean, of course, he's a British sociologist. So anyone else, right? कोई भी हो, जो जहाँ का होता है वो अपनी सोसाइटी के, अपने समाज के examples देता है. अब आप इंडिया में बैठे हुए हैं, you're sitting in India and you are trying to make sense of examples that are set in the US. अमेरिकन सोसाइटी के, अमरीकी समाज के एग्जाम्पल को आप समझने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, ब्रिटिश समाज के एग्जाम्पल्स को आप समझने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, किसी यूरोपियन, दैट्स नॉट हाउ इट वर्क्स. तो एग्जाम्पल्स हमको देने होंगे यहीं के, क्योंकि हम हिंदुस्तानी हैं तो हमारे एग्जाम्पल्स भी हिंदुस्तानी होने चाहिए आइडियली. सो इफ वी कुड एक्चुअली गिव एग्जाम्पल्स फ्रॉम इंडिया, then what happens is we are able to understand the example. And the moment you are able to get the connection between the example and the theory, then you will always remember the theory, right? So day-to-day examples are used. And also, you are always told about a lot of things that are not necessarily textual. एक तो होता है किताब से बहुत सारी चीज़ों को बताना कि भाई फला किताब में ये लिखा हुआ है, उन्होंने ये लिखा, इस हैंडआउट में ये लिखा हुआ है. That's one thing which is important. But the other thing that is important is अलग-अलग sources से कैसे बताया जा सकता है. For instance, if something could be explained with the help of a film song, किसी फिल्म के गाने के जरिए अगर कोई चीज़ बताई जा सके, किसी कार्टून के जरिए अगर कोई चीज़ बताई जा सके, किसी फिल्म के थ्रू, किसी फिल्म के क्लाइमैक्स के थ्रू, कोई नेटफ्लिक्स की सीरीज के थ्रू, किसी एडवर्टीजमेंट के जरिए अगर कोई चीज़ बताई जा सके, कोई होर्डिंग जिसको कहते हैं उसके थ्रू अगर कोई चीज़, दैट्स वेरी फैसिनेटिंग. सो दिस इज समथिंग दैट वी ट्राई टू डू, राइट? सो वी ट्राई टू provide examples from a diverse set of fields, and not just examples that are there in the books, but examples that we design on our own, we think of on our own. And the idea is, कोशिश ये है कि आज नहीं तो कल, कल नहीं तो परसों, एक वक्त ऐसा आएगा जब आप खुद इन एग्जाम्पल्स को समझने लग जाएंगे और आप अपनी तरफ से एग्जाम्पल्स देने लग जाएंगे. The day you are able to formulate your own examples, the day you are able to see sociology in a lot of things, that is when you have developed what we call the sociological perspective, right? So that's very important. So this is how we help you develop it. And as I said, that there are so many examples. Let me give you a quick example. You know, these days in news, there is a very, very important reference, which is in relation to mustard oil, right? अभी बहुत इसके ऊपर बात हो रही है कि भाई कड़वा तेल जो है, इसकी सरसों का तेल जो है, इसकी कीमत बहुत बढ़ गई है. अब ये इसको अगर आप सोशियोलॉजिकली देखें मिसाल के तौर पर, राइट? सो जैसे बनारस की अभी एक बात हो रही थी कि वहाँ पर एक मंडी, एक बहुत बड़ी मार्केट है जहाँ पर सरसों का तेल, कड़वा तेल जो है ये मिलता है. Now, let's say that the prices have gone up. Now, a sociology student, how is he or she going to look into this? एक तो सीधा सीधा भाई prices have gone up, हो गया, बात खत्म. लेकिन दूसरी चीज क्या है, जहां कहीं भी तेल बिकता है, हाँ, लेट्स से कोई ऐसी जगह है जहां पर बहुत से लोग आते हैं और होलसेल में तेल, पीपे जिसको कनस्तर होते हैं, वहां पे इस तरीके से गांव देहात में वो दिखता है हम लोगों को, तेल बिकता है. नाउ लेट्स से दाम बढ़ गए, the prices have gone up and massively, right? I mean, it's not just like 5-10 रुपए की बात नहीं हो रही, we're talking about double, trebled. Prices have really gone up. Then what happens is the customers, the number of customers will go down. तो पहले जहां पर मान लीजिए रोजाना 1000 लोग आते थे, अब वहां पर सिर्फ 100 लोग जा रहे हैं. Now, what also happens is किसी भी ऐसी बिक्री की जगह पे जहां बहुत लोग आते हैं, बहुत सारी और भी चीजें चल रही होती हैं. लेट्स से कोई आदमी वहां पे समोसा और कचौड़ी बेच रहा है, कोई आदमी वहां पे आइसक्रीम बेच रहा है, कोई कुछ कर रहा है, कोई रिक्शे चल रहे हैं, ई रिक्शा चल रहा है, बहुत सारे रेडी वाले, रिक्शे वाले मजदूर हैं जो सामान आपका रखवा करके आपको बस स्टैंड तक लेके जाते हैं, एंड सो ऑन. नाउ सडनली व्हाट हैपेंस इज, बात तो सिर्फ ये थी कि सरसों का तेल के दाम बढ़े, बट एवरीथिंग एल्स इज अफेक्टेड. समोसे वाले के समोसे नहीं बिक रहे हैं, कचौड़ी वाले की कचौड़ी नहीं बिक रही है, आइसक्रीम वाले की आइसक्रीम नहीं बिक रही है, दुकानदार खाली बैठा हुआ है, रेडी वालों को काम नहीं मिल रहा है. एंड सो यू कैन दिस इज व्हाट सोशियोलॉजी डज, यू आर एबल टू सी द कनेक्शंस, राइट? तो दाम बढ़ा है सरसों के तेल का, बट एज अ रिजल्ट ऑफ दैट व्हाट हैज हैपेंड इज that a lot of people have been deprived of, have been denied daily wages. भाई पैसे नहीं है, खत्म बात. This is just one example. Pandemic के बारे में हम कह सकते हैं कि pandemic has completely changed the understanding of what we call home and the understanding of what we call work. Work की भी समझ बदल गई है, home की भी समझ बदल गई है, violence के instances बढ़ गए हैं. I mean, earlier husband and wife were absolutely in love with each other, but now it turns out they can't stand each other because, you know, work was kind of striking the balance. हम दोनों एक दूसरे की शक्ल ही नहीं देख रहे हैं 12 घंटे तक. We are fine. Now we are stuck with each other and we can't just, I'm sorry, but we can't stand each other now. अब हो गया. तो बहुत सारे divorce cases हुए हैं, बहुत सारे domestic violence के cases हुए हैं. So these are all, I mean, so pandemic is pandemic. But then if you talk about it from the vantage point of sociology, right? तो ये चीज हो गई. Similarly, people are not able to grieve together. हाँ? जैसे डेथ होती है, लोग नहीं मिल पा रहे हैं. किसी के घर में डेथ हो गई, people are not able to visit. आप डेड बॉडीज को देख नहीं पा रहे हैं, आप डेड बॉडीज को छू नहीं पा रहे हैं. These are very, very important things in human societies. You want to be next to the dead person. This is how you engage with the dead person. You want a person to die in front of you. लेकिन बहुत सारे लोग हॉस्पिटल्स में खत्म हो गए. People could not even see them. People could not even do their death rites. This has completely, you know, it has kind of fractured. I mean, I wouldn't use the word fracture, but let's say this has massively affected the society. So ये सिर्फ examples हैं. Of course, one can talk about this in more detail later. Just a moment. So what is it that this test series, what is it that the foundation batch is kind of geared towards? As I said, you know, the question paper, अगर आप पिछले 2-3 साल के सवाल देखेंगे, 3 साल के, the question paper these days is more towards application, right? ये ज़्यादा interesting सवाल बना रहे हैं. वो boring, पुराने, monotonous type के textual सवाल कम, मतलब होते हैं, वो भी होते हैं. कुछ यूनिट्स से तो वही सवाल होते हैं, लेकिन ठीक ठाक सवाल जो है थोड़े से एप्लीकेशन बेस्ड होते हैं, जिसमें आपको थोड़ा सोचना है, थोड़ा जुगाड़ लगाना है. नाउ व्हाट इज इट दैट वी डू? द फाउंडेशन बैच दैट वी रन, so we always try to make sure that they are promisingly endowed with, all our students are promisingly endowed with the much needed conceptual clarity and rarely found sociological perspective. Conceptual clarity आ गई तो धीरे धीरे sociological perspective बन जाएगा. And once that is there, then they have a decisive edge in UPSC civil services examination. और हर एक कंपटीशन में, हर एक competitive एग्जाम में एज ही चाहिए होती है, थोड़ी सी एज चाहिए होती है, एंड एवरीथिंग इज टेकन केयर ऑफ. ओके, इसके अलावा द टेस्ट्स दैट वी कंडक्ट, अगेन बिकॉज we exhaustively look at previous year questions, we keep a tab on the shifts that are taking place. कौन सी यूनिट से किस तरीके के सवाल आ रहे हैं, कौन सी यूनिट्स पे कितना ध्यान देना है, कौन सी यूनिट्स में कितना स्कोरिंग है, कितना नहीं है, एंड सो ऑन. So the tests that we conduct, or the test series that we have, it is kind of designed in tune with the changing requirements of UPSC, right? Changing requirements का क्या मतलब है? Again, बहुत ही application based है. So what we do is we want our students to develop the necessary sociological reasoning and confidence to cope up with these changing requirements. वो confidence का होना बहुत ज़रूरी है. ऐसा ना हो कि आपने कोई सवाल देखा और आपके हाथ पांव ठंडे पड़ गए. तो टेस्ट सीरीज से आपको उसके लिए ऑलरेडी तैयार कर दिया जाता है, right? That you have that confidence. You know it for a fact that you will be able to write on this, and you will be able to write on this really well. ऐसा नहीं कि उल्टा सीधा आप कुछ लिखेंगे. You will write really well. Anyone who reads your answers will be quite impressed by the ways in which you have created you have done the landscaping, you have gotten into the crux of the answer, and you have concluded your answer, right? So that's very important. And then these are some of the sources, but before I talk about these sources, ये तो मतलब इसलिए कि भाई लोग अक्सर सोर्सेज की बात करते हैं, हाँ, कि भाई पेपर 1 के लिए क्या पढ़ा जाए, पेपर 2 के लिए क्या पढ़ा जाए. तो आमतौर पे ये किताबें सब लोगों को मालूम है. These are the Bibles. I mean, for instance, Anthony Giddens की Sociology, latest edition. I mean, here the image says 4th edition, but I think 7th edition already आ चुका है इसका. Then you have Relevance and Holborn, the blue one. It's a scary book, ठीक ठाक मोटी किताब है, but it's a fantastic book. उसी तरीके से टीवी बॉटमोर की Sociology, छोटी सी किताब है, A Guide to Problems in Literature. और फिर उसके बाद से ऑक्सफोर्ड के डिक्शनरी ऑफ सोशियोलॉजी. बट और ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, ये चीजें सिर्फ रेफरेंस के लिए बताई जा रही हैं. जो हैंडआउट्स दिए जाते हैं, वो हैंडआउट्स, एंड आई एम बीइंग वेरी ऑनेस्ट, the handouts are a result of at least 7 to 8 books. So it's a combination of all of this and even more. So the handouts have everything. The handouts have everything, and this is on the record. It has whatever you get. So if you get a handout on observation method, if you get a handout on Karl Marx, the handout that you get on Durkheim, or the handout that you get on, I don't know, sociological theories of power, जिस भी चीज पे आपको handout मिला है, वो exhaustive है, जिसको कहते हैं उसके बाहर से कुछ नहीं आएगा. It is there. लेकिन ये सिर्फ बता दिया जाता है कि भाई अगर किसी की दिलचस्पी है, if someone is interested, और कोई बुराई नहीं है, किताबें पढ़ना अच्छी चीज है, आप एक्स्ट्रा रिसोर्सेज इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं. There's nothing wrong in consulting Oxford Dictionary of Sociology. There's nothing wrong in going through Baltimore and Haralambous and Holborn or Giddens or any other book. तो उसलिए बता दिया जाता है, but the handout is more than enough. The handout is made, is composed, keeping in mind the changing pattern of UPSC, right? तो क्या किसी भी यूनिट पे जो हैंडआउट बनाया जाता है, वो प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस की रोशनी में बनाया जाता है. इट्स ऑलवेज इन द लाइट ऑफ प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस, सो दैट whatever is there in the handout, each and every question that has been asked over the past 40 years, it's there. आपके हैंडआउट का जो कंटेंट है, उसके बाहर कुछ भी नहीं है. So that's important. इसी तरीके से पेपर 2 के लिए भी ये हमने कुछ रिसोर्सेज बता दी हैं. सोशल चेंज इन मॉडर्न इंडिया, एम एन श्रीनिवास की बहुत मशहूर किताब है. एक बहुत ही अच्छी किताब है कंटेम्प्रेरी इंडिया, सतीश देशपांडे की, दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी के प्रोफेसर हैं. और एक ऑक्सफोर्ड हैंडबुक ऑफ इंडियन सोशियोलॉजी है जो वीना दास ने एडिट की है. ये कंटेम्प्रेरी थीम्स के लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. और EPW एक जर्नल है जो कि वीकली है, और इसके लेटेस्ट इश्यूज फ्री ऑफ कॉस्ट होते हैं, तो उनको one can just skim and generally read stuff here and there and find stuff that is important for his or her notes. But again, the handouts that you get is essentially a result of all of this. उसमें EPW से भी बहुत सारी चीज़ें ली गई हैं, उसमें वीना दास की किताब से ली गया, सतीश देशपांडे से लिया गया, एम एन श्रीनिवास. और इसके अलावा, in addition to this, there are many articles that are read and consulted, and through those the notes are made, right? So this is something that you need to keep in mind. Now, the foundation batch is, in all likelihood, is something that we will start um, after the prelims. There isn't really a fixed date yet, but it's very much in the pipeline. So once students are done with the prelims and they are kind of done with the much needed break, that's when the foundation batch begins, sometime in October end perhaps. But I can't really specify a date, but definitely after prelims in October end. And then the test series, again, it's post prelims. So it is test series to zyadatar, of course, uska ek apna ek logic hota hai. So it will be between the prelims and the mains examination. So that's what it is. And as I said, that everything, whether we are talking about the foundation or we are talking about the test, everything is essentially conceptualized and designed keeping in mind the changing requirements of UPSC sociology optional examination. So whether we are talking about the handouts or we are talking about the overall class lecture format or we are talking about the test series, everything is around the changing format of UPSC. Application based, कि किस तरीके से हम conventional तो समझ में आएगा ही, but how do we handle application based questions, whether they have to do with current issues, current affairs, or they have to do with other GS related stuff. How do you have the sociological imagination, the sociological perspective that distinguishes your answer from those written by others? So that is all for now. I hope that whatever I shared with you in relation to the importance of sociology as an optional, the immediate reasons, the important reasons, and then a very, very cursory kind of a engagement or analysis of, or let's say overview of the syllabus, following that, the question paper format, and then the sources. What is it that we do? What is it that we are aiming at or we are aspiring for as far as the foundation program is concerned, and the test series that we have. So I hope that whatever little I shared with you in the past, I don't know, an hour or so, was of help. Thank you very much for your patience, and good luck. All the very best for your future and ongoing endeavors. Thank you.
Current Affairs by ForumIAS is an all-in-one program that covers the dynamic aspect of the syllabus from both prelims and mains perspectives. Last year, we have helped more than 100 students crack IAS with our current affairs classes.